From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Sandra Day O'Connor announced she has dementia and likely Alzheimer's disease. How Arizonans across the valley are reacting to the news from the first female Supreme Court justice.
Maricopa County Recorder Adrian Fontes said there won't be problems with voting places on Election Day 2 weeks from today. But early voters tell Cronkite News they're having problems with their ballots now.
As a migrant caravan travels from Central America to the U.S., Arizona's Immigration and Customs Enforcement drops off migrants at motels in Tucson. We speak to the community next.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jordan Daphnis.
And I'm Matt Lively. Thank you for joining us.
Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor announced her early stages of dementia and likely Alzheimer's disease to the nation today. Cronkite News reporter Jimmy Jackson talked with the judge who knew O'Connor about her impact here in Arizona.
Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's announcement mentioned that because of her diagnosis with dementia and possible Alzheimer's, she will be stepping away from public life. Chief Judge of the Arizona Court of Appeals Samuel Athuma recalled the times he spoke with O'Connor and says it was an honor of a lifetime.
She is an icon and a pioneer in every sense of those words. She has been, after her time on the court, when she stepped aside an active service in 2006, just a tireless champion for teaching civics in elementary schools and the independence of the judiciary.
Today's announcement brings awareness to the disease, and the Alzheimer's Association tweeted a thank you to O'Connor for sharing her diagnosis. Alzheimer's research is the least funded chronic illness in the U.S., according to the association. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease researcher Edward Afori says brain diseases are increasing and money is needed to tackle the problem.
Getting more funding is definitely important so that we can solve in these situations, not necessarily, not only perhaps lead to a cure, but also treatments and rehabilitative measures for people that have these chronic diseases.
Judge Thuma fully supports O'Connor's decision and says he knows that it was a hard one.
My thought would be to keep her and her family in our thoughts as they continue to progress and deal with this disease that's affecting them in ways that I can't fully appreciate, but I sure wish them all well.
Alzheimer's would not be new to O'Connor, as her husband lost his battle with the disease in 2009. In Phoenix, Jimmy Jackson, Cronkite News.
O'Connor was the first female justice appointed to the Supreme Court. Before that, she was a judge for the Arizona Court of Appeals, as well as a member of the Arizona State Senate. Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor had a major impact, having grown up in the Phoenix area. The ASU Law School bears her name, and so does a local high school.
Maricopa County Recorder Adrian Fontes said there won't be major problems at the polls like the primary elections back in August. He told the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors last night they will be implementing changes to prevent errors, including no outside contractor, training for poll workers, and real-time monitoring. He's encouraging voters to go to the polls early or mail in their ballots early. More than 500,000 Arizona voters have already had their ballots received by the state. That's according to the Arizona Secretary of State's office. About 45% of those early ballots were registered Republicans, about 32% were registered Democrats, and 22% of the ballots were designated independent or other. A top analyst at the Secretary of State's office says he expects the total number of voters in the election to surpass the early estimates of 2 million statewide.
Meanwhile, some voters are reporting problems they've had retrieving their early ballots. Voters have also reported other problems pertaining to their ballots as well. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein looked into the problem to find out how voters can make sure they get their ballots in time for the election.
It took me a moment to realize that it actually was a real ballot.
Megan Galopi lives with her husband and 3 cats in Arizona, a state where she has been registered to vote in since she was 18.
Since I'm a registered independent, for the primary I had to go online and tell them which ballot I wanted. And I remember seeing a question as to whether or not I wanted a large print ballot. I did not check that.
But the large ballot arrived on her doorstep.
Took some photos, thought it was funny, but realized that it was a real ballot, and so I used it, mailed it in.
Gallopi says she called the Maricopa County Recorder's office to let them know she did not want to receive any more large print ballots, which are intended for voters with disabilities. She received another one for the general election and has reached out again to correct the issue. Other voters have contacted County Recorder Adrian Fontes, concerned that they have not received their ballot.
Usually we ask that on October 17th, which is already a couple of days ago, if you haven't received your ballot by then, to contact our office, and we've been experiencing a high volume of calls.
Fontes says voters who have not received their ballots or have damaged their ballot can call their office and order a new one. Voters out of state who have not received their ballots should also call. Any early voters who have not received their ballot or have other concerns can also visit any early voting centers such as this one at the County Recorder's office to come in person to vote and make sure that their vote is submitted on time. Gallopi says she plans to call the Recorder's office after the general election.
Just make sure that you talk to someone.
In Maricopa County, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
The midterm elections are 2 weeks from today, and the deadline to get a mail-in ballot is this Friday. Voters should remember to make sure all the information is up to date, including their address, before requesting a ballot.
Arizona teachers are still fighting for change throughout the state. Reporter Tanaya Williamson joins us in the broadcast center with more information.
Thousands of Arizona teachers walked in support of Red for Ed, and while they may not be down at the Capitol, they're still on the move for Knocktober.
I love, saying who I think would be right for the state and for Arizona, but at the end of the day, if they disagree, I respect that. I just hope they'll get out and vote.
November 6th is just around the corner. Educators like Maria Hasse are meeting up on weekends to take part in Knocktober, an effort to reach as many Arizona residents to encourage them to vote.
I've canvassed in different places and I've phone banked in different places. So depending which group I'm with, I'm carrying their lit,
Some teachers are new to canvassing, but hope it will help make a difference on Election Day.
I felt like I have to continue in this fight to get better education, better funding for public education. So this is why I'm here.
Canvassers are given packets with at least 40 addresses to reach out to. And while they may not reach everyone, the goal is to speak to at least 10%. For the times when residents can't be reached, a voter guide is left at the front door. And for those who can't get outside and walk around, making phone calls is the top priority.
Hello, may I please speak to Tristan? I worked in public education as a classroom teacher and then a counselor for 32 years. I know the importance of funding for education.
Linda Somo is glad to do her part in reaching voters for the November election.
Volunteering, reaching out on campaigns.
She also feels that as residents, it is up to us to work towards making a change.
Get out and vote, everybody who is qualified to vote. And the second thing is to do some research on the candidates and elect people who are actually going to do what's necessary to move Arizona ahead.
Knocktober is not just a weekend activity. The Arizona Education Association sets up opportunities for people to canvass every day of the week. In the broadcast center, Tanaya Williamson, Cronkite News.
Less than a week after President Donald Trump came to the Valley to endorse Republican candidates, including Governor incumbent Doug Ducey, his Democratic challenger David Garcia looks to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders to boost his support. Garcia introduced Sanders at the rally following an appearance by Democratic Representative Raul Grijalva. Sanders targeted young voters at the rally, encouraging them to get to the polls ahead of the election.
Our job in 2018 is to have the highest voter turnout in American history.
Sanders was in Tucson this morning and is holding a rally at Arizona State University's Tempe campus this evening.
A migrant caravan is making its way up to the U.S. from Central America. But what is happening to the migrants already here in Arizona?
Coming up on Cronkite News, we talk to the Tucson community about the migrants being dropped off at a motel. Next.
And a mysterious polio-like disease has affected 8 Arizonans, and the CDC doesn't know what's causing it. A closer look at the AFM disease when we come back.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles.
In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
We're one organization.
The caravan of Central American migrants trying to reach the United States have made their way to the southern Mexican town of Wixla. President Donald Trump said at his Houston rally that the caravan is an assault on the U.S.
I think the Democrats had something to do with it, and now they're saying, I think we made a big mistake, because people are seeing how bad it is, how pathetic it is, how bad our laws are. They made a big mistake.
The caravan is resting today out of respect for a Honduran migrant who fell from a vehicle yesterday and died. It's also a chance to relax weary and blistered feet after days of marching. The caravan is so large, estimated at more than 7,000, that a few hundred of the migrants had to camp outside of the town. The group is still more than 1,000 miles away from the nearest U.S. border crossing. In interviews, the migrants have said they are fleeing violence, poverty, and corruption.
Meanwhile, there are many other undocumented migrants who are crossing into the United States and presenting themselves to Border Patrol seeking asylum. Within the last few weeks, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been dropping off many of these migrant families in different locations throughout the state. Cronkite News reporter Cammie Clark went to Tucson, where one organization had no other choice but to turn a roadside motel into a shelter.
Many of the charities that normally step in and help in this kind of situation say they're overwhelmed by the number of migrants being dropped off by ICE authorities. Both of the men we spoke to asked that their full names not be used after just arriving to the motel, located on the south side of town. One room has been turned into a makeshift hospital. Here, they separate donated clothes depending on size and who it's for. And in this one, they make pupusas that are a staple of Central American food. This Tucson motel has been transformed into a welcome/processing center for hundreds of undocumented immigrants. Catholic Community Services rented the motel after its church facilities didn't have enough capacity. Now it's these rooms the migrants are calling home after surviving their journey into the United States.
Desde el primer día sentimos miedo. En camiones va sobrecargados uno tras otro y mucho peligro.
Most of the migrants staying at the motel are from Guatemala, and that includes many families with small children.
Ahora al venir acá y nos damos cuenta de otra realidad porque ya con el GPS pues dicen que no tenemos permiso de trabajar.
Es muy duro, en primer lugar, dejar uno a su familia y emigrar para acá, lo que es los Estados Unidos. En primer lugar, uno se encomienda primero a Dios y luego para poder ver si uno logra llegar.
The motel is staffed by volunteers as migrants continue to get dropped off every day. Tucson City Councilman Steve Kozachek has been collecting donations and says that the drop-offs are a coordinated political move by federal authorities.
Because it's great optics, it's a great narrative right at the beginning of an election cycle to say we are being overrun on the border by these illegals and we have to elect strong border candidates.
In the meantime, the migrants keep coming, risking it all, they say, because of criminal gangs, the domestic violence, and non-existent employment back home.
Cuando salí de Guatemala yo no tenía ningún centavo, ningún quetzal. Lo que hice fue hipotecar mi casa.
Uno se viene con la ilusión de trabajar, con la esperanza de sacar a la familia adelante y de que vamos a poder tener la oportunidad de un empleo, pero en la realidad se ve difícil.
Cronkite News specifically asked ICE about Councilman Kozachek's allegations. They did not respond to our question. They did say, however, they are simply abiding by the Flores settlement agreement, which requires federal authorities to release undocumented immigrant children in detention without unnecessary delays. From the Broadcast Center, Cammie Clark, Cronkite News.
A disease similar to polio is affecting some kids in the state, but the CDC doesn't really know what's causing it.
Coming up on Cronkite News, a look at the mysterious illness called AFM that is paralyzing children when we come back.
We have seen quite a bit of isolated storms going on in the eastern half of the state, but I'm going to be talking about when these storms are going to start to calm down later this afternoon. Coming up next on Cronkite News.
Indeed, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
A rare disease similar to polio has now affected at least 8 children in Arizona. Cronkite News reporter Samantha Lomibao spoke to one boy about his diagnosis and treatment.
The day that it happened, he woke up normal.
10-year-old Talon Spitzer went to school, even though he had a shoulder and chest pain, came home, and that night, Rochelle Spitzer asked Talon to get ready for bed and to bring his dirty clothes upstairs.
I was scared. I didn't know what was going on.
And that's when he realized that, that he couldn't pick up his hamper. It was that quick.
In just a matter of minutes, Talon went from his nightly routine to being rushed to the hospital.
And I was sitting in there in the ER room demanding that I'm not taking my son home with his hands paralyzed.
And I couldn't open my hands anymore. At first I thought it was like a joke, like I was kind of laughing and stuff. And then I realized it was serious. And that's when it was got really scary, and then I just couldn't control anything anymore.
It took doctors several months to diagnose Talon with acute flaccid myelitis. While they were trying to determine what caused the paralysis, Talon underwent weeks of physical therapy to try to regain movement.
When Talon first came in, there were multiple issues that we had to address. Weakness. He had a lot of weakness in his lower extremities, a lot of weakness in his upper extremities.
He's went from not walking. We didn't know if he would, and he couldn't use his hands at all, and he slowly, over 2 years, regained that, but it doesn't come easily.
And simple things like tying a shoe are all things Talon had to relearn.
Has a hammer in his hand, and we're just working on strengthening his wrist motions. Something that you and I would take for granted, opening a doorknob.
Talon has now recovered enough to play one of his favorite sports.
He had to go through a lot of therapy to even be able to walk again, and then it was starting to build up the endurance and stuff, and then kind of moving into running from there. This has been his third season now that he's been playing rec soccer again.
Although he is on the road to recovery, there's still more work ahead on his journey.
I just look at something that I can do right now and I say, I just want to do that, and so I work towards it until I can do it.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, AFM may be caused by viruses and mild environmental toxins, with most cases being found in children. In the Broadcast Center, Samantha Lomibao, Cronkite News.
Mexico is bracing for Hurricane Willa, an expected Category 3 storm that's on track to becoming one of the strongest storms to hit the region. Willa is expected to hit Mexico's west coast with high winds, heavy rainfall, and a powerful storm surge that could be life-threatening. Hurricane Willa is the 10th major hurricane to form in the northeast Pacific Ocean this year. Thousands of people have been evacuated so far. The storm is expected to hit the coast this evening.
It was a cloudy day in the valley today.
Let's check in with Alexis Leal to see if the cloud cover will stick around. Alexis?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, another cloudy day here in the valley. It's 82 degrees right now here in Phoenix, hitting a dew point at 61 with winds blowing 17 miles per hour. And we will continue to have isolated storms throughout the valley today for the next couple of hours. For the next 8 hours, we are going to be 76 degrees by 8 p.m. And then looking at the clouds and radar, we have experienced a lot of rainfall going on in the eastern half of the state. Down south in Tucson, they have reached rainfall going up to an inch of rain, enough north scattered showers up until about 8:30 tonight. Looking at the high temperatures for the state tomorrow, we're going to top off in Yuma at 91 degrees, 86 in Phoenix, up along the rim at 59 in Flagstaff, 61 in Cholo, and a pretty pleasant day in Globe at 75 degrees. If you're planning on attending the Arizona State Fair this weekend, Saturday is a perfect day to do that. 90 degrees on Saturday with a little bit of clouds, but perfect for fair weather. And for the next 7-day forecast, for the weekend, we're going to see nothing but sunshine with possible rainstorms happening on Sunday and Monday. From the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Alexis Leal, Cronkite News.
History in Phoenix can be seen through some of the city's restaurants.
Coming up on Cronkite News, we talk to restaurant owners of historic restaurants in the valley about the value their businesses add to Phoenix's history.
If you're looking for one show that tells you what happened that day in the world of business, it's NBR.
We saw a classic shipwreck.
Nordstrom's opening stores.
Triple-digit gains.
Crude climbs.
We're there to help our audience find new investment ideas.
The market still has room to go up.
Nightly Business Report is the longest-running business television program in history.
Weeknights at 10:30 on Arizona PBS.
Officially from 36, and he hooks it in. Arizona State wins. Keeping one deep, and it is caught. Jalen Strong. Do you believe
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow. Phoenix restaurants rooted in history rely on loyal customers and an appreciation for the past. That's a fact highlighted after a downtown staple closed its doors after 9 decades. Reporter Charisma Sandoval shows how longtime businesses leave a lasting impact.
Longtime Phoenix restaurants often mean much more than a place to eat. One customer mourned the closing of a restaurant she and her husband often visited.
It was our favorite place when we first got married. We've been coming here since 1971, and it was our weekend thing to do. And, you know, he has since passed, so it holds a lot of memories.
Sing Hai Chop Suey House closed its doors in downtown Phoenix after 90 years. Jonathan Larkin, a frequent customer, said he waited more than an hour to have one last meal there.
For me, as a former legislator,
I received one of my first endorsements here, and I just want to come back, say goodbye.
Michelle Dodds, Historic Preservation Officer for Phoenix, says the city values the historic touch restaurants like these bring to the community.
There's a real appreciation, more so now than ever, for a property that offers something unique, something that has a history, something that's just not some cookie cutter thing you could see anywhere in the U.S.
Some restaurants preserve history in a different way with a historic building. A pharmacy that opened in 1929 has been turned into a diner where customers can sip drinks from a soda fountain.
We decided we wanted to buy McAlpine's because we didn't want to see it close. The previous owner was going to auction everything on eBay, and we just felt it was such a piece of American and Arizona history. It was really special.
But restaurants still may fall to the bulldozer.
I think it's just the way the city's progressing, and new businesses coming in, and the tall buildings and hotels and all the venues that are going on around here. So I think it's just changing with times.
In Phoenix, Charisma Sandoval, Cronkite News.
Other longtime restaurants that have closed their doors recently include Tom's Tavern in downtown Phoenix after 87 years. But others, like homegrown Carolina's Mexican food, founded in 1968, are still turning on the burners.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.